Good morning, guys.
How you doing, Matt?
I'm awesome. Evelyn, pleasure to meet you. Evelyn.
Good morning.
We actually connected. Evelyn, I just looked it up. It was 3 months ago, so it's taken us that long to get you on.
That means you guys are doing the right thing. You're busy.
We're busy.
We're trying.
Yeah, we're actually heavily sort of booked up through June now. Like we're just loving it. I mean, I never in a million years thought we'd be in a position where we're having this many cool conversations. So it's actually kind of like a pinch yourself moment pretty much every day when I look at the production calendar. I'm like, oh man.
And I think Matt and I both said yes to you because, Matt took an epigenetics course. I've taken an epigenetics course. I read a book on epigenetics. It was Tessa, God, what's her last name? But it's absolutely fascinating to have somebody on that has an experience in it and has that professional background is really, really the conversation we're excited to have. And if you could kind of give us your origin story, kind of how you got into it, all that stuff. And
sure.
Even if you want to bring it up to how you got here, that's fine.
Sure. So in practice, some 36, 37 years. And at first I was in a rural area, integrative pain management, and seeing that try that approach to, recommending for people and not seeing them really get better. And then on the medication side of things, seeing dependency start. And I'm not anti-pharmaceutical. I don't have a stake in anything anywhere. Just the abuse of it is what I say, time out, right?
That's an important distinction because so many people jump on the bandwagon, and I'm not saying it's not rightfully so,
definitely.
but people jump on the anti,
Well, there's a time and a place for everything, and once we cross that line into dependency, which we can have that argument, was that the practitioner over prescribing? Was it did we not get the right patient? Did we go a little too hard? Funny story. I have a patient who has a lot of autoimmune disorders, and a lot of it leads to chronic pain. And she does not like opioids. She just sits there and takes the pain. She was getting surgery, and they gave her some fentanyl, and she's like, I OD'd on the operating table. They had to give her Narcan while she was under.
Wow.
It was the weirdest thing. She came out. She's like, I officially OD'd on heroin. On not heroin, fentanyl.
That's insanity.
Whoa.
But you know what, though? I had a colonoscopy, and they give you fentanyl to put you out for a second. And he's like, listen, it's going to be the best nap of your life. And I'm like, I woke up like without any recollection of the thing. But I was like super well rested. I'm like, yeah, I could easily see how this sucks people in. Jesus Christ.
That was amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I had the exact same conversation. He's like, you're going to be out in a second. It's going to be the nap of your life. I woke up and I said I could see how people get addicted.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like jaw-droppingly obvious how people get addicted, right?
Yep.
And we had a near-death experience woman on it's not even aired yet, but she was on a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And she was popping these things like crazy. And she was a meth-addled prostitute in Vegas, like just, and I was like, how do you find yourself in that position? But then you have a conversation like this, you're like, oh, you just have one really good experience.
You know what, Matt, you're painting her as a meth-addled prostitute, which is accurate, but like, I would use the word charming since you're near her. She was just an amazing human being when she came on, and I'm like, oh, so she saw God and stuff got right. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, I was speaking in the decidedly past tense.
The decidedly past. Yeah. There was several hours of her possibly being dead in a bathroom.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't want to derail us, but Evelyn, it is a valid point to call out.
There's a distinction, right? Yeah. There's use and there's abuse.
Right.
So then fast forward 20 years later, I'm practicing in an urban area, and I think, okay, cool. We're going to have a lot more resources. We're going to have things available. And it was the exact same thing. Throw a dart and hope it lands someplace close for that individual. Didn't make any sense whatsoever. So professionally, I'm thinking like, there's got to be better ways here. So then personally, I married a man who was an alcoholic, actually had several addictions. And a year after our daughter was born, found out that he was adopted. We didn't know this. So we now had no family history for him, and I'm seeing these behaviors in him. I'm seeing the mental health side. I'm seeing the addiction side. Now we have a child. So as a parent, it's like, what do I need to know for my child? That's my job, right? So I start taking a deeper dive into all of this. Now, putting all of these things together to where we are today, back then the science wasn't there. But the way mental health and the addiction space still is treated is you got yourself there, get yourself out. We weren't employing the science, the technology that had evolved to the point where we could start using. There was no diagnostics. It was just like, hey, bad boy, bad girl, go do this, and this is your fault. And, so much had transpired. So kind of all that together, trying to do this as fast as I can, became our push of 18 years in R&D to what we have today. And as the science evolved to get to this point of being able to look at everybody as an individual, right? 8 billion people on the world with 8 billion different sets of DNA, yet we're treating everybody exactly the same and then wondering why we're not getting the results.
Yeah, that's so on point, because Matt and I often talk about, right? We want those RCTs to be N equals 8 billion if we could.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, N equals 1, because if it doesn't work for you, who the hell cares?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And we have a guy coming on the show who's going to yell at us about taking supplements, and one of the things he was talking about was there are 4 genomes that respond to fish oil differently. One of them, it lowers cholesterol. The other 3 either don't or make it worse. So he said, if you look at fish oil as a supplement, yes, it's great. It can lower your cholesterol. If you are 25% of that equation that actually has a genomic lowering, and so
I hope he tells us, because I will pull that info up. I still have the raw data from 23andMe.
So he said, and that's the other thing. And Evelyn, I we might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but he's actually brought up a good point, which I didn't factor, which is 23andMe doesn't take a complete genome sequencing. They
23andMe also just declared bankruptcy.
Yeah, for a reason. The reason that their tests were so inexpensive was because they were selling your data rather and absorbing the cost of the test. So they kind of set the pace for that whole industry, and people think it's all the same, and it's not. Like there's guys out there pushing methylation, and we've got it. You're looking at a couple genes versus there's a slew of genes you need to.
So it's not the 2 MTFR that tell the whole picture.
MTHFR, you got it, you're doomed. Or like that 23andMe is really not an accurate portrayal, because you're not looking at all the genes involved in that. Someone would say, hey, I'm cool, no worries for me, when that's not true, or wow, I'm doomed, when that's not true either. You've got to look at the whole picture.
So I just started looking into full genome sequencing.
Is there a company, and not asking you to endorse something or jump the gun here, because I have a feeling we're going to go deeper down this hole, but is there one that exists that is a little bit more of a complete view? Is this something where we have to turn it over to somebody like you, where it's a functional medicine kind of setup? Is this something we can do just out of our own interest?
Yeah, so that's what our company does.
So you do the full genome test? Yeah, okay.
And we look at specific areas.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like he was saying, like, if you have your full genome sequenced, you basically can download the raw data just like you could with 23andMe, and you'll get all that same data you had with 23andMe, because obviously that's not changing, but you also get a shit ton more.
Right.
And instantly I was like, well, why the fuck didn't I do that in the first place? And the answer is no one told me that.
No one told you you could. Yeah.
Like I didn't even know that was a thing. Right.
Yeah. Well, you go back to when 23andMe came on the market. It was like, oh my God, like how, and they were the everything. So people really didn't know.
Sure. But it is fascinating. I mean, even the 23andMe, the sliver of that, I mean, before they went kind of spiraling, I mean, I get stuff from them weekly. Like, look, here's new stuff that we found.
Here's new relatives. Here's new.
Well, it's not just relatives. It was like, your susceptibility to smell or something.
Well, what's so weird though, when they have you do those questions, I must have answered close to 1,000 of those questions, and they're like, you're least likely to go bald. Nope.
And
You're least likely to have detached earlobes. Nope. You're not prone to color blindness. I can't see shit. I'm like, you got the wrong dude.
Yeah. I feel like you've got me confused with somebody else.
There's another version of me.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Google Willow proved the multiverse exists. So
who knows?
So who knows? They could have grabbed your gene sequence off of another
it
parallel
slipped timelines.
Yeah. So how robust, I guess, since we're on this topic, how robust is that full genome sequencing at this point? Like, where's the tech at with that?
So very robust, but then it comes down to what do we need to know? Because you can get lost in a lot of data that really isn't going to impact the individual too.
You just described a day ending in Y for Tom and me.
But that's the scary thing, right? So I saw I don't know what her degree was in, but she was specialized in showing, and she's like, a lot of this DNA code that we have is from our ancestors having viruses, and it embedded into this code. And then, I mean, the epigenetics of all of it, are we there yet? Are we savvy enough? I understand we know a lot, but is that whole thing where we could look at anything and go, this is this, this is this? I feel like there's still got to be a ton of gaps.
Oh, there's still a lot of gaps, and it changes every day. I mean, it's something where you're staying on top of it every single day because of what's new, what you need to know, how what we're learning impacts in different ways. So, that was really like how it all came about. And in that space, in the mental health and the addiction space, as much as we want to say there's no stigma involved, there still is. There still is.
Sure.
And
there's
for a lot of
something
people,
wrong with that person.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's like you got yourself here, get yourself out, which is why technology wasn't even jumping into that area. And nothing could be further than the truth. When people say to me, like, I listen to this and I get it, but how do I tell my loved one, whoever it is? I'm like, tell them to listen to the podcast because it removes the bad boy, bad girl moral compass to it. And it says, this is science. And I did a TED talk and exactly trying to take really heavy duty science, make it 7 minutes or less in simplistic forms. Is like I said, we all have strengths and we all have weaknesses in our DNA. We all do. Some of us think we have no weaknesses. Not true, right?
But I got plenty.
That in itself is probably a weakness, right?
I got fistfuls of supplements here.
Arrogance.
The arrogance gene. But it's knowing where the weaknesses are. Okay, now what are we going to do about that to optimize it? And that's the beauty of epigenetics, which to me is the most exciting part of science because it gives the power back to the individual.
And I gotta tell you something funny. I had to look it up before the show because I'd forgotten, but I took a Coursera class. It was in 2013.
Wow. Yeah.
On epigenetics. And it blew my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Because in 2013, precisely nobody was talking about this shit. Like, I don't think 23andMe was even a company yet. Like, and if it was
in
brutally
infancy,
young. Like, I mean, there was nothing. I looked up that class on Coursera, and the same teacher from the University of Melbourne is running what appears to be their only epigenetics class on Coursera. And I'm sure she's updated it, but it was such a fun class to take because A, nobody had ever talked about that, but B, at an abstract level, it's super fascinating to think that we have all these light switches in our body that can be turned on and off. And I haven't really stopped thinking about that. And I think this is where, unfortunately, there's like a Venn diagram here where you see the Sinclairs and the Brian Johnsons of the world that are sort of trading on people's sort of aspirational qualities of like, okay, if Brian Johnson does this or Sinclair does that, and I could switch this on with epigenetics, we could live to 200, right? Yeah. And I'm like, and it's like it's the sizzle that's being sold, and I think that's sort of the downside of it. But I would love to know, sort of like, from your view, practically, like how much of that is like real,
right? All the data in the world is great, but if you can't do anything with it, what's the point?
It's useless. You just like this. Hey, look at what we figured out. Pat on the back, right? Sure. Unless we can take that information and move people's lives to a better place, it's useless information to me. So the easiest example is like we had a mom come to us. Daughter is 20 years old now. She's like, I don't know who my kid is. Came back from college, don't know her. Okay, what happened between 19 and 20 in her life? She went to college. She went away for the first time. She's doing her college studies. She's holding down a part-time job. She's really not sleeping much because of all she's doing. Her diet's all on her own, and she's got entirely new friends. I'm like, okay, so her entire environment has changed. Okay, we looked at her DNA. It was always there, but we never saw those genes get turned on because her environment was really easy at home. So the same stressors never turn those genes on. That's the most simplistic way to say in real life, how does this convert? So you see people become totally different. Like, what the heck is going on? Yeah. Joe, it was always there. It was always there.
This is something that I've heard talked about a lot with MS, right? Somebody could be walking around with that gene and then one crappy week at work and next thing you know, hey, what's this neurological symptom?
Correct. Like that's one of the genes that we look at. And it's like, if it's already like we have people already with MS and they're like, yeah, and it was the perfect setup. You listen to their backstory and it was the perfect storm. Other people, there's a polymorphism there, but they're not seeing it yet. Okay, just be aware. And how you live your life actually matters.
And what's funny about that? When I was in my 20s, I'm in New York City, like smoking weed at work because we were in the ad agency world and it was fun. You're drinking your 5th cup of coffee by 11 a.m., having a cigarette outside. Yeah, it was great. And nothing bothered me. I could work in 50, 60, 70 hours a week, no problem. I could stay up until 6 a.m., go to work at 7:30. Everything was fine. Right. And some of that's youth, but it was really a mindset situation. Then when I was in my 30s and had kids, I instantly switched off. And I've spent 20 years now trying to get back to that point because I'm like, what the actual fuck happened here? And when you say things like that, I'm like, I wonder what my sort of underlying structure looked like that I was this sort of hyper protective. We talked last night on the show. I was like, I feel like the dad from The Cruise. This giant dude huddling my family in a cave, ready to ninja chop.
No one can go outside. It's dangerous.
Right. And I wasn't like that. I was never like that. Not even a little bit. And now I can't see the world any other way. Right. It just would be nice to explain some of this shit.
Well, I think my question, kind of to piggyback off of that, is can you unpull the trigger? Oh, yeah. Can you put the genie back in the bottle?
Yeah, so that's the whole idea behind the epigenetics optimization. So you now know what's going on with the individual. Then we look at those biochemical pathways and say, okay, where's our problem? What do we need to do to optimize that?
And what's the expression of that? Is it usually a food, a supplement, a medication, a little of all?
Could be all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like lifestyle. It might be
lifestyle modification.
Yeah, that's one thing. Lifestyle. Then there's going to be nutraceuticals, then there'd be pharmaceuticals. But lifestyle might be, intermittent fasting is going to be really good for you between a 12 and a 15-hour window. But for the next person, no, not so much. To your buddy's point, who you said you're going to have on, that's you don't all need to be taking these things. There's a big point to that because it's based on what are you made up of, right? If you've got problems in autophagy, which is kind of like the garbage man of the cells, and you're not moving the literal crap, it's probably going to be good for you. But which ones? Is it HEG5? Is it HEG12? Is it HEG16? You go through all that. It's not just don't worry about,
And the hyper efficient guy in me, the voice inside of me that's just yearning for efficiency and everything, wants to do a test like this. Look, my pie in the sky, money and time, and resources not a factor.
Right.
I would love somebody to be like, we tore you down to the molecular level, and here are the supplements that you need to take. Forget about the 25 that you are taking.
Yeah.
And 18 of them might be the right ones.
Right.
But I could be making the proverbial expensive piss, right?
Bingo. And Matt, you're so spot on because just because things are over the counter, People, it's just over the counter. It still changes your biochemical pathway. Right. And you could actually be doing damage by taking something that's just over the counter because you don't need it. So you're putting more stress on your liver, your kidneys, your bladder, even though it's natural, to what extent? Like,
right.
That's the other point of it.
Yeah, tobacco is natural.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that is the interesting part because, like, for example, I take a vitamin B every day, and Tom and I were talking about the MTFHR thing.
And we both, that both was flagged heterozygous on me,
Yeah. And I can't remember. I could take a non-methylated vitamin B. I remember was the outcome. I was only looking to find out, like, is the one I have to take. And the brand I take actually has a methylated and unmethylated version. I was taking the unmethylated one. I just wanted to make sure because I could have just been putting drops on my tongue for years.
And you
doing
have,
absolutely nothing.
Absolutely off the chart B12 level in your bloodstream, but it's not doing anything. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And that is what I mean, that's a stupid general example that, by the way, I had to go through and look at my 23andMe data and find that on my own.
And you can literally upload that raw data to another site. And I think
but they couldn't do it for free. And I wasn't going to pay for this answer because it's wasn't that important. But I found the SNP and then found a reference in ChatGPT of what that SNP would look like one way or the other. And then just literally did a find and got it. So, I mean, you could Sherlock Holmes this thing pretty easily, but it's a pain in the ass.
And
Matt, I think that's why you need somebody like Evelyn to kind of hold your hand.
Right, Matt, how many people would know to do all those steps? They don't even have the foundation to know where you would go to try to clarify that.
No, and that's what I think is awesome about living in the world today. But I think actually here's a sort of an evolution question. Because we can have people like you, and because 10 years ago there was 0.2x amount of you out there, right? Like, do we still have an uphill battle, perhaps even more uphill battle to get over that educational barrier for people to even accept this as like a valid trajectory?
Yes, and reason being because now you have these like guys who are just marketers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're coming on the scene and they're like, this is what you need to do. And here's, like a 23andMe that made it so cheap because they were selling you data and they couldn't even pay for the processing of the test. So like all the chuckleheads that come into the game and start changing the science of it, that's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and this is like sort of the part which we could get into 8 podcasts about the FDA and they're fucked up.
Well, but Matt, I think it's even people like us fall victim to that because we'll go read studies.
Right.
But we don't know exactly how it's affecting our bodies either. Like there's all these little steps where this could go, I don't want to say horribly wrong, but in a direction that's unintentional, and listening to marketers or hopping on a podcast and go, oh my God, he talked about this for 3 hours and we all need to be doing this. And, it's the same thing with like the Dr. Oz format. You watch an hour-long episode and now I got people showing up in my office going, I need to take green coffee beans. I need to do this. I need to do that. Are we sure about all of that? That sounds like a lot of new products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think otherwise intelligent people, and sometimes the things they're saying, you look at them like, are you serious? You just bought into that? Like, how did you buy into
that?
Well,
I mean, the genesis of this show, Evelyn, was us sort of like doing sort of a risk reward sort of look.
Yeah, we used to have a scale. Like, is this going to hurt you? Does it cost too much? But even then, we dropped it, I think, after like the first 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, because it got tedious. But I mean, like, I take quality of life every day, and I've been taking it for years because I got into a conversation with a guy who studies mitochondria for a living, right? And so we got into it and he said, look, there's other ways of doing this, but they put it in a good package. The company with Daniel, who runs that company, I don't know him personally, but I know him through people, and his OCD about the research apparently is off the charts. So like, I feel comfortable that they GMP, certified in some stuff. They're not USP certified, but like they've got it. Right. But here's the thing. Does my mitochondria even need optimization?
And I will say, I took that for 2 months and didn't notice jack shit. But if you give me a methylene blue or you do something like tiny, and I'm like, whoa, what was that? You know?
Okay, I was going to say, glad you brought up the mitochondria example, Matt, because so many people, when you think about our being in the mental health world, being prescribed based on symptomatology observation. Okay, I can't get off the couch. I used to love going to my kid's soccer game. Now I could care less. Like, just don't have the zest for life. Are we talking serotonin? Are we talking dopamine? Are we talking epinephrine? Are we talking norepinephrine? 1, 2, 3, 4 of those? Or are we talking about different mitochondria SNPs, which is going to make you show up with no energy, could care less, and feeling really crummy? So that's getting down to what is the underlying factor here?
Right.
Because mitochondria can create that same presentation.
Interesting. And it's funny because you look at, I mean, I got into another conversation with actually the same guy about they're saying that cancer and like a bunch of these things are basically energy problems.
Yeah.
Like they're not actually real problems. They're like, well, I mean, they're real problems, but they're energy pathway problems.
Right.
And that's kind of a fascinating thing. Like, what do you mean? My energy is fucked up, so I'm getting cancer? How the hell does that work?
Well, but I mean, just even that example alone, like, you know, you're going to give somebody an SSRI, and if that's not going to help, right? I mean, there's been a couple of studies coming out that are talking about depression and SSRIs not doing a damn thing.
Great point, Tom. So one of the genes that we look at tells us if an SSRI is even going to be effective for that individual. So I can't tell you the amount of people that have come to us with been on SSRIs for decades. First off, never meant to be for acute situations. Life got tough, right? Life stinks sometimes. Next 2 weeks, go ahead, take this, come back. We'll discuss what's going on. Now people are living on them in perpetuity. It's done nothing to their serotonin because they had a polymorphism in that particular gene. It was never going to work to begin with. So let's look at what it does to liver, kidneys, bladder, etc. Beyond that, what does it do when it's that didn't work? Take this, double it, half it. Let's move on to this one. And then the physician starts pushing back saying, this works. This is you. What that does to that person's emotional state is destroys them when it was never going to work to begin with.
That's wild. And so, like, can we get that deep in the weeds now with these tests and everything? Interesting.
Yeah. And anybody being put on an SSRI, you should be looking at that first.
Well, and I'm assuming this would work for most, that whole spectrum of mental health issues, right? I mean, ADHD, you know, even some autism, we would say.
Yeah, and autism, a big part of the energy.
Yeah.
Right. We're seeing so many of those genes related to energy having to do with autism, but just the mental health aspect of it. We're talking about over the counters and, you know, more is best. So it's like the amount of people on GABA, it's not working. Well, GABA and glutamate are a seesaw, right? So GABA, glutamate, primary excitatory, GABA, primary inhibitory. It's always working like this. People just shoving GABA down their throat.
GABA's like the bell of the ball these days. I hear that.
Like, I don't know. And I'm all like, I could have some MSG right now. It's delicious.
Yeah.
like I want Chinese is what I'm getting from this conversation.
Yeah.
One gene, glutamic acid decarboxylase. Its job is to convert the stimulant, glutamic acid, to GABA, the calming. If you never convert, you're never getting to that calm. The GABA in the world isn't going to change that. We've got to.
It's like the B12 thing we were just talking about, right? You got a whole shit ton of it, but they ain't doing anything.
Running around, it's having a party.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing that we have this level of knowledge now. It's just, and Matt and I talk about this a lot, the accessibility of it, right?
Yeah.
You know, if we weren't having this conversation right now, if we didn't connect online, how would we even, because now I know Matt and I are both going, okay, how can I afford you?
I mean, literally,
going like, all right, how do we do this for the whole family?
Yeah.
And so, and here's the problem, like this show's biggest problem for me is that I just now
costing
have
us too damn much.
It's costing me a fortune. But like, look, I fell down the rabbit hole in the microdosing thing. I've never felt better in my entire life, but I would love to have that quantified somehow, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, and it's decidedly serotogenic in nature. So like we're definitely talking about that. So you talk about SSRIs. I'm like, maybe the reason I haven't needed one of those is because I don't need one. My serotonin is on point right now, but I don't know. Is that true? I do not understand.
Exactly. Like the COMT gene, catecholamine methyltransferase, it has to do with degrading serotonin. You know, so it's like all of these pieces. And when people jump into, I'm going to microdose, I'm going to do this. Well, do you think it's good or bad? I'm like, that's not it. Is it right for you?
Yeah.
Right. To know it, you know, it's like people want to beat up on pharmaceuticals. It's like you're doing the same thing with natural. Like,
right. And I mean, even foods, even lifestyle stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Matt and I've had this debate because I was more heavy into weightlifting. He's more of a runner. And it's like, well, what's better, right? And then we talk about the AMK or AMP
versus mTOR.
mTOR, and it's like, well, what's better? And it's like, well, how are we wired? How are we structured? How are we built at that fundamental level?
And it's funny, even after that, I mean, I've had that as a background research for years, and it's like funny because people are still actually in that debate, right? And it turns out from a phenotype standpoint, there's some people that mTOR responds totally differently.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, and I don't know where I sit on that spectrum either. So maybe I need to be a weightlifter and not a runner. Who the fuck knows, right?
But wouldn't it be interesting to be like, Tom, you gravitated toward weightlifting, Matt towards running, because really that's what your body
our body wanted.
Yeah.
Right?
I hope my body's that intelligent, to be honest, because right now I want a bacon cheeseburger along with a side of fried rice.
Right.
And I don't think either of those are in the right direction, you know?
But meanwhile, my 23andMe did tell me that I did favor slow twitch muscles. So I was like, okay, so there might be something to the reason why I like Ironman and marathons. And, there might be something to that. I don't know.
Can I ask you guys a question though? How did this marriage come about? Because you are such good banter.
We so do you want to say it? I feel like now this is like we're a married couple and like we met.
Honey, you tell our meet
you
cute.
tell it this time. You do it so well.
Yeah. No, we were in this awesome group that I still think has shaped a good chunk of my life from the relationships that we got out of there.
It messed us up in the best possible way.
In the best possible way.
Okay.
But we would just get into these
and it was a business group, by the way.
Yeah.
But we get into these ridiculous conversations that went on for, sometimes an hour. And the woman who was a proctor of the group, she's like, you got to record this shit because I got to press pause and go Google half the stuff you're talking about. And like, it just sort of during COVID, we're like, hey, fuck it. You want to do this?
Well,
and
even then, there was so many times where it was me and him in the back of the room talking. We came into the group around the same time. And then, and we still haven't had the dude on, right? COVID hit. Our friend
he's coming on actually in 2 weeks.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. This is like the third time we had to reschedule him. Yeah. But with that, we'd have these little breakout sessions during COVID, and one of them was with this double PhD in psychology, and he wrote this book called Driven, which is he has basically this genetic component to why certain people are entrepreneurs and why and he gives the two genes, and meanwhile we're in this small group together. Jeff and who else was in that group? So there's four of us. Two of them were only there half the time, and Matt and I were basically doing this with him.
Right, and it was just super cool.
It was just super cool.
Yeah,
and you know what? It's funny too. He kind of gave a good perspective. He was basically like, Tom and I were like, oh, I don't feel normal. He goes, You're not.
Well, I was like, I'm just a regular dude. And he's like, no, you fucking aren't.
Yeah. He goes, go to Walmart and just look around.
He's
for
like,
5 minutes.
let's fix that right now. And I'm like, I would rather punch myself in the face repeatedly than walk into a Walmart. And he goes, you're not normal. Get that out of your fucking head. And I was like, I think you just fixed me.
Yeah.
Like I was like, but that is the best thing anyone's ever told us.
Yeah. And you know what, Evelyn, the crazy thing is like, it was sort of destined to be, because like we have, to your point earlier, not everybody's got the capacity or even the drive, whatever you want to call it, to go out and peel that onion the way you need to peel it to really understand the impact of what it would be in your life, right?
Yeah.
And even less people would have the translation capacity to take that knowledge, try it out on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then report back sober about what that result was.
Well, and then even a further step is, oh shit, I don't know all of this, right? The anti-Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
Let's find somebody who does. Is Dunning-Kruger, Kruger-Dunning?
No, you're right.
But like, all right, let's find the specialist,
Yeah.
And like I think we were trying to find a poop specialist because I'm like, there's all this stuff about gut. Let's talk about poop.
Yeah. Oh,
speaking of which, my Cologuard box is literally right here. Although if I knew I was getting knocked out with fentanyl, maybe I should get the colonoscopy.
Yeah.
Next sponsor, Cologuard.
Yeah,
Cologuard. Let me tell you, their follow-up is insane.
Yeah,
they're like texting me. They're like, "Have you pooped in the box yet? Have you pooped in the box? Have you pooped in the box? How long is the kit good for? A year?
Great. I'll poop in the next year. Don't worry.
I got some time.
Yeah.
But I took the Grail test from Galleri, and it was a test for like 57 cancers in a blood test. You take 2 vials of blood and whatever. I'd love to interview their CEO or their head of product development because like I want to talk about that because like that's sort of like where we're at technologically, right? Yeah. And funny enough, that guy who's going to come on, he's like, I don't know, that test is kind of meaningless. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I mean, it tests for 57 types of cancer. He goes, yeah, but the day after the test could be the day you start growing a cancer. And if you're only taking it every 5 years, I said, but here's the thing.
Oh, you just freaked Matt out.
No, you don't.
Matt's doing it every year now.
No. But I said, look, it's an expensive test, but it's an expensive test that once a year I don't mind spending because it eliminates all question marks of those things because the false positives are the only thing you really have to worry about with that test. And if you've got the mental fortitude to get past, like you have possibly liver and gallbladder cancer, and then you go track that down to find out if you do or do not. I got a clean bill of health this year on that, which means as of 48 years old in January of 2025, I did not have any detectable version of these 57 cancers. Doesn't mean the 58th cancer I didn't have, but these are the big ones: glioblastoma, gallbladder, like pancreatic, lung, like it's all the big ones, right? It's the ones you don't want to get caught off guard with.
Yeah. No.
Last year, I know 3 people that died of pancreatic cancer. It's fucking crazy to me. Yeah. And they are all in their 40s.
More and more.
Yeah, it's like the number one. What did
they say? Gen Xers are coming out swinging with cancer now.
Yeah.
And like, look, you kind of have to do the risk reward thing, right? Like, look, your service is clearly not free. And so when people come to you, I'm sure they have to make that decision as well. Say, hey, what is this worth to me?
Exactly.
And the crazy thing is insurance companies won't this could sidestep so much cost down the road.
Well, interestingly enough, guys, we had a really large insurance carrier come to us, which is unheard of.
Yeah. Wow.
And they said, we have X amount of people in our data bank. We would love to do a pilot with you guys. Like, let's do it. Because we know the efficacy of what you're talking about. If we do it, other insurance companies are going to have to do it.
Well, that's crazy. You would think they move so slowly too.
Yeah, but you think about how the business model is set up. It's every CEO's term. I saved us money. It's they're thinking about. That's all they're thinking.
But think about let's go down this.
I'm going to call it the Luigi effect.
Yeah. Let's go down this thought hole for a second. Let's just say the insurance company, instead of doing what they do now and playing whack-a-mole with once I get all fucked up, what if they gave me a Galleri test every 5 years, free of charge, and they paid you to decode my sequence one time, and then they had like a checkup with you like once in a while. Hey, try these things out. How many trillions of dollars would we save long term?
And how much better would we function as human beings? Think about that.
Everything would be more efficient for everybody.
Every aspect. And this was my argument about socialized medicine. It's like, it's inherently selfish of me to want everyone around me to be super healthy. Well, I live in a better fucking society. You guys aren't all assholes coughing on me.
Yeah.
Like,
true. But yeah, it makes sense because you're going to save a ton of money, and it's a one time. Like, people ask me, like, what do you know, where do you want to see this? I'm like, I want to see it like a CBC. Only time. Because to me, the sweet spot of all of it is do it on a kid. So we know, here's your playbook. You still have free will. You still make all your choices. But
I mean, that's a hell of an idea. They come out of the womb, they do the snot thing and the this and that, take a little blood out.
Going, yeah.
And money you'd save.
Yeah.
So is there a follow-up then? Do you do something like, oh, look, I put all these protocols into place. I took the supplements. I did the diet. I did the lifestyle modifications. Do you follow up? And then what does that look like?
Right. So your genes are your genes. They're not going to change. But what we're seeing is the symptomatic expression change.
Yeah.
We can then look at measuring the things that I talked about, the neurotransmitters. We can measure them and say, wow, look, you're where you're supposed to be. You're within range. So you could see it that way, symptomatically, and then seeing the function there. Yeah.
Using your example of the college kid who was 20, if you had looked at her genomic profile prior to those stressors expressing that, would you still have had a crystal ball to what the potential was there?
Well, what I do when I have a kid that, like, parents are forward thinking and they're like, hey, I know this could have changed my life. Like, I'm doing it now, but I want to do this for my kid. I'm like, yeah, because where do your kid get their genes from, right? So I'll say to the kid, like, here's the deal. This is what this means. This is what this means. You're not seeing it yet, but you're going to be in an age where your buddies are going to say, hey, after school, we're all going to do this. And we're going to try it out. And, it's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh, okay, I'll do it. You do it. Next day, you're like, hey, man, let's do that again. They're like, no, we're doing something different today because you're the kid that it was going to affect that way.
Right. That's interesting.
Know that. You still make your choices. You still make your decisions. But I'm telling you, it is going to affect you a different way than your buddies.
That is fascinating.
That is. And even with, like, the conversations, Matt and I have talked about it. Like, clearly he owns headshop.com. We're both cannabis consumers. And both, we're kind of honest with our kids. I mean, my daughter is like, I think it'll help me with my anxiety. And I'm like, you're 15. Can we just... based on the research I have access to, can we wait until you're 18? The further down we can kick that can.
Yeah, I told my kids, I'm like, 25 is our golden number here. That's totally irrational. I get it, but like, let's get us as far down the road as we can because you'll thank me later.
And know why it is that you're even saying, hey, I think this is for me. This is a good idea because of that anxiety. Yeah. Whatever the thing is, let's identify that.
Right.
And let's nail it. Let's kick it out. And then if at 25, that's still what you want to do, you may not even have that on your radar anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just didn't have these options. So, like I got a 16-year-old who's, staring down the barrel of college. And, one of the vendors for Head Shop actually was making this nail polish that reacts to fentanyl and rufinol. And he was selling it for college kids in particular, or single women in urban areas.
In bars and stuff,
and just put a little nail polish on their pinky, and then every time they get a drink, they just kind of swizzle stick it around, and if it turns, then they're good. He never got the nail polish to work, but he sells these night out litmus strips where you basically, it's like
a reagent.
You've got like 10 in a bag, and it's for the night, right? And you just kind of dip, and you're like, nope. Next. But it works. You could take like a bag of cocaine and rub it in there and find out. You could rub it on weed. You could rub it on, pills a little bit, although I don't think it's as effective on a pill. But the fact is like, that exists. And fentanyl overdoses are through the fucking roof, like accidental fentanyl overdoses.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, apparently some people are dying on the table, for God's sakes.
And that is under clearly medical supervision. The person that gave it to her knew what he was doing. It's not, hey, just let's smoke this and we don't know what's in it,
Yeah. Well, my wife took an allergy test and they were trying to like give her a solution that would like up the reagent, and so before she took the test, they sent her 2 EpiPens. They're like, keep these handy just in case.
Oh, wow.
But now, and that was an ounce of prevention on their side, but it got me thinking, I'm like, what's the survival kit in 2025 look like for a college
kid?
And
how horrible
Narcan,
is it? On one hand, it's
EpiPen.
amazing that you have a reagent test, right? That's great. That increases women's safety. On the other hand, what the fuck happened to us?
Yeah.
Like where we need to have that level of vigilance just to go out and have a good time.
Yeah. But that's my point. Like, I need fentanyl test strips, I need Narcan, I need an EpiPen, and now I can go to the bar and have a beer.
Didn't we talk about a defibrillator last night?
Oh,
too?
yeah, we did. We said, every house should have a defibrillator in it too. I'm like, I don't know, but you know what? Then you go back to the other side. I know it's an option, and if my son overdoses on fentanyl by accident or on purpose, and I could have sent him with Narcan, or his buddy, his roommate, his girlfriend, anybody.
It could have been in the dorm somewhere,
and he could run to his room and grab Narcan and shove it up their nose, and save them.
Yeah.
Why not? It doesn't feel
especially when they give that away for free.
Right.
And these kids are fucking idiots. They're not going to think about that. And most parents are idiots and they're not going to think about it, so it's like.
Yeah, it's human nature to think it's never going to.
Isn't that genetics, right? If the parents are idiots, the kids are going to be.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of that, Evelyn, we've talked a couple times about these studies that keep coming out about descendants of Holocaust survivors and how they have
longevity.
They have an increased hormetic response that their counterparts don't have. Do you guys kind of see that in your line of work in other examples or even in that one? But
do you mean from like an intergenerational trauma kind of?
Exactly, an epigenetic inheritance, if you will.
No, that's all real. That's all real. Yeah. I mean, there's a plethora of data to support that. That you think about, okay, here's your DNA at the starting point. You have all these stressors in your environment that turn on those genes that aren't going to be beneficial to you. Then that's how you pass on at conception. Mm-hmm. Boom, this is turned on, and you just keep on going and going. It's kind of like you are doing a crescendo to these negative impacts of being turned on. Yeah, that's real stuff.
But if those epigenetic switches are not genetic, but they're epigenetic. So they're can you pass down? I mean, are you passing down the genetic or?
That's what I'm saying. You're passing it down when that gene is turned on. Boom.
Right. So
how many generations does that happen?
Good question. I don't know that, Tom.
Yeah, I heard somebody say something like 14 generations, and I was like, all right, look, can you link a study there? Because that.
I don't study on that.
The studies 14 generations.
Well, I mean, that's it. Where you're going to get DNA from 14 generations ago. It's like, I'm lucky I knew who my great grandparents were,
Yeah, right. Right. And so Evelyn, the answer I think I heard you say is that I'm passing down not just my DNA, but my epigenetic light switch configuration is coming along for the ride.
Correct.
Interesting.
And it's already turned on. So it's like, here you go. I'm giving it to you with the light bulb on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then there is where, doing a little prick when you're born and knowing like what light switches are turned on and off, it would be definitely an interesting proposition.
And then at that stage, the parents have the ability to have some influence on that. And
give
their kid the best shot. Yeah.
Right. You want to talk about lifestyle recommendations. You now have a kid that you're literally going to bring from 1 day old on. And here's the best lifestyle. It could make everybody really think about these things do matter.
Yeah.
Right? There's like a Gattaca version feeling in that, though. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're like, where everybody's engineered.
I'm also like, I don't know what it is about the fear, because we lean in on the AI, we lean in on everything, and at the same time, I'm like, this is how we get super villains.
Right?
We're gonna have these no, we're better humans than the rest of you.
Right.
We got to get rid of you.
Yeah.
No, it's as simple as their strengths, their weaknesses.
Yeah.
We need to know what our weaknesses are. And then it's up to you, but everybody has the equal playing field. You're given your cards. You have no choice in that. Here they are, play them out. Mm-hmm. But now we can play them differently.
That's interesting. And so like, we hear things like telomere lengthening, shortening, and that like aging and stuff. Like how far into like sort of those longevity rabbit holes does this practice take you?
Yeah, I mean, it does impact telomere lengthening and shortening, because if you're identifying where your weaknesses are, and that's what we concentrate on, it's going to change.
You're bolstering that as much as possible.
Yeah.
I think
doubling down on it.
Matt keeps coming back to longevity, and we've talked to a lot.
Well, I'm just curious because it's so adjacent.
But I'm also like, look, I've done this 48 years. Future doesn't look so good.
Yeah.
I'll hang out for another 50, 40, 30, 20.
I'm clocking in at 65 next month.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
It's like, no, this stuff is real.
Yeah.
And it can impact your life in a good way.
But guess what, Evelyn? When I was 5, 6, 7, 65-year-olds were fucking old. Not just because of my perception.
My relatives were dead already.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it wasn't just because I was young and thought they were old. No, they were fucking old. They creaked, they hobbled, they fucking...
I don't know. My entire family, like, never dies. And I'm like, we're cursed.
Yeah.
My great grandmother was 106. It's like, Jesus Christ, give her some fucking rest.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. Yeah.
Man. Crazy.
My grandmother died in her 90s despite eating like Kentucky Fried Chicken and Taco Bell most days of the week and not getting up off of it.
I remember my great grandmother at 95, they wanted to put her on a statin.
And you're
like your cholesterol's over 300. She's like, what is it going to do? Kill me?
Yeah,
like she literally said that to the doctor, and I'm like, that's
also why my brain is still working. That's a whole conversation. Can't open.
Well, and that
then we won't sell statins.
Yeah. Well, this was what I was kind of edging at with those questions is like, how many of these things do we just sort of accept as
fact,
as inevitable? Like, I'm going to get old and I'm going to lose my mind and I'm going to, get feeble and shit my pants and like, all right.
Yeah.
All of that could definitely happen, but like how much of that has to happen, right? Like how much of that could we sort of guardrail
sidestep
or move?
It's a guardrail. Yeah. That's the way to say it,
And especially these days with all the work being done in Alzheimer's and dementia and stuff. I mean, we are really diving deep down that rabbit hole. And like that seems to be decidedly epigenetic in origin. I don't know where you draw the differentiator between genetic and epigenetic there, but it does seem to have a very high influence.
Absolutely.
So it's like, okay, well, I don't want Alzheimer's. That kind of sounds terrible. So what could we do? And is that something, are those sort of things that come up in that test too? Like, here's one of your weak spots. You're vulnerable. Stuff.
Yeah. And then there's over 400 studies that talk about once Alzheimer's takes root, there's no medication that's going to change it.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the search of finding that medication because we're talking about the numbers just going through the roof. But it's identifying it early in the game and then saying, what do we need to do to optimize what we've got here? And then it's the how you're living your life part after. That's the physiological. That has to be the basis. That's your foundation, right? Your unique physiology. And then we look at the other parts, like, what are you doing to look at the blue zones, right? Places where there's more centenarians than anywhere else in the world. And you look at their habits, and purpose is like the number one thing.
We just talked about that recently, actually.
Matt and I are trying to get the guy. There was a guy, he's a PhD candidate that was like trying to debunk the blue zones.
Oh, wow.
And one of the biggest things he said is like with these older populations, sometimes there's no birth records. He also said that pension fraud was huge in some of those areas. So it's like, no, grandma's still alive. Yeah, keep sending that check. And he based on the data points, and the differences in all of those blue zones, he goes, yeah, this is mostly fraud.
Wow.
Which was such a crazy concept. And I think universally, though, that purpose was definitely there, right? That was
they've proven a bunch of
that was definitely there.
I've been to some of those communities, and it is different. It's a place you really don't want to leave because people are really living as we're supposed to, in community, in communal, and, treating each other with respect, something that's lost today.
Sure.
All those foundational principles, they actually live them.
Yeah, and somebody was saying like, and which is such an easy point, but they're like, if you have somebody that you care about, that you want to wake up to every day, whether that's a spouse or a neighbor or a friend or whatever, like children, whatever, you just are not in the same physiological state of existence than somebody who's alone and with nobody.
Well, wasn't there that study we talked about that on the show? I think it was like loneliness takes 7 years off your life. It's the equivalent of smoking cigarettes.
That's the epidemic today.
Yeah,
we opportunity to be in communal, but it's all BS. It's like swipe for a friend. What, are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, there's no legitimate human interaction.
Yeah. And loneliness is an epidemic.
Yeah. And it's funny because like back when somebody fucked up and you wanted to kill them, you didn't have to. All you had to do is say, you got to leave this village and not come back.
You're banished.
You're done. Like,
exactly. Well, look at isolation in jails. There's a reason for that. We're going to put you in bad boy timeout.
Sure.
So you're going to be in your own head 24/7, and you're going to take yourself out of the game.
That's going to help.
Yeah.
Or when you get out, you're not going to be functioning, and you're going to be much worse. Yeah.
Yeah, doing well.
Yeah. So Evelyn, what would be sort of your sort of recommendations, I guess, for people that are kind of curious about this? Is there a crawl, walk, run with this idea, or is it kind of you're either all in or all out? Like,
how do we do it?
In and do that. The buccal swab. Know what I'm talking about. That's your foundation. That's your blueprint. That's your guidebook, right? So that's our starting point. And then from there, be okay. This is what would be recommended, and really knowing from even not just nutraceuticals, pharmaceuticals, but the lifestyle, what is going to be best for you. So many people are doing things that really aren't going to benefit them other than, maybe thinking that it is. So you can really tailor it. Like to your point, Matt, of the telomere, is it going to change it? Yeah, it's going to change it because we're identifying, measuring, identifying where we need to make those changes. So I'd say that's like the starting point. Know what your blueprint is. Right.
Interesting.
At this point, we had like, hey, when Uncle Joe comes over, he gets hammered and we have to take him out. And Aunt Mary, she's a little off the walls. And, this one died so early. Like, that's the only information that we had as far as family goes. Like, boom, this is you. And this is a one-time thing. You don't have to do it every year.
And I was adopted on my paternal side.
Okay.
So, and I never met my biological father.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of question marks around there. A lot of his family, I heard through secondhand, third-hand, fourth-hand stories, died in their 50s of lung cancer. I was like, well, you were a bunch of short, round Portuguese immigrant people who had very low socioeconomic status, smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and were alcoholics.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting you to go much past 50, right? Like, just,
You're self-limited. Yeah.
I mean, you sort of set that blueprint in motion on your own, but I'd love to know, like, I do know that my biological father died when he was 50.
Yeah.
I'm 48, almost 49. Like that's sort of a creepy, crawly thing to know about, right?
Yeah. So with the situation that I started the show with find out my husband's adopted, we have a daughter, he died at 42. That's stuff we need to know from my daughter.
Yeah.
42.
Somebody in your husband's life died?
No, my husband.
Oh, your husband died at 42.
Sorry to hear that,
my goodness.
by the way. Yeah.
At 42 years old. So was this important information?
Absolutely,
the most valuable thing you can get.
Well, we don't have to dive into too deep on that, but like, was that something that you could have identified through your test? Like, whatever took him out, like, was that something that would have been predictable?
Multifactorial cancers, yeah. And then lifestyle stuff that he did that didn't help him.
Right. But so you think that this could have affected change in his life had he known this information?
I mean, there's a reason we look at the amount of inflammatory markers that we do, because they are going to exacerbate. Whether it's a mental health condition, whether it be a cancer, yes.
I mean, it seems like it comes down to that inflammation. We literally had a conversation last night where it was like, at the end of the day, how much inflammation you have in your body and where it's located is what you end up, what ends up taking you out. Yeah. So can I ask, because now I'm very interested in connecting with you after. Is this something that you can do online as a consultant? Do you need to be licensed in our state? Is this, all of those kind of like more the pragmatic, practical, operational questions?
Sure. So we drop ship lab kits anywhere in the world, right? So where we have our clinicians are not licensed would depend on, are you acting as a consultant?
I see.
Or a physician, yeah.
Yeah. So we figure out how to get it to you, is the bottom line of it. So it makes it something that everybody can do. And then we train therapists, counselors, other allied health into learning how to do this and then act as consultants and and have, affiliates.
That's very cool. Yeah, I echo Tom's desire.
Well, immediately when the conversation started, I'm like, I could do things so much more efficiently. I could actually, thinking of that giant basket upstairs in my kitchen full of supplements. It's like, well,
yeah,
am I just shooting in the dark here? And I would like to think I've researched all of those things. I understand why I need those. I've done some testing to support that I need those, but if I can get it on that epigenetic level,
right,
it is so much more savvy. And then kind of, is there a blueprint given? Is there marching orders? Is there like
then there's stages of, here's what to do. And we go over it. One of our clinicians goes over, lengthy, like an hour and a half kind of thing, because we're going over every biomarker, what it means. And then is it heterozygous? Is it homozygous?
You're not making me not want to do this, Evelyn.
This is weird. This is weirdly attractive to both Matt and I. Matt and I are kind of like getting into this now.
Yeah, we could just send it to you because you're a fast track guy.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah. But then it's like, okay, we've identified everything. Now we're going to do more than just admire it. What are we going to do to epigenetically change things?
And it's crazy. Actionable. We talked to a guy, I think, Tom, was it on the show or was it off show? But we talked to a guy who said, you can take all your 20 supplements that you're taking and take it to a compounding pharmacist and just have them make a cocktail that incorporates all of them, so you can clear the pill bottles and the droppers and everything out. Like I hear what you're saying. My wife would be
so happy, but
I hear what you're saying, and I said again, time and money aren't no object, right? Like I'm sure a compounding pharmacist isn't cheap to make that cocktail, but it's also like if you, and this is where so many of these conversations.
I've seen a couple of those companies fail too, where they it's not necessarily individual tablets. It's not one pill, but it's a packet, right? Yeah, they're like, here's Matt's packet.
Yeah.
Right.
The overhead is so high on that, though.
But if you've got the money to do all this stuff, like, and you could live, like, if you go down the road, you're $1,000 for the Grail test and this and that and the other thing and compounding pharmacies and everything. It's kind of maddening that we have all of this capacity. And if you only had thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, you too could be as healthy and optimized as this.
Yeah.
It's maddening.
Yeah, that's the hope that one day, like when I said the insurance company that came to us, because they don't come to you, would, be part of a normal, because we could save so much.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
If that's all you care about, the saving the money and not the lives actually.
Yeah, I was just going to say, who gives a shit about the people?
It's one of these, I think it's one of those questions where regardless of the motivation, the outcome benefits people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then everybody wins, it's like, it's simple. It's simple.
But to your point, it's myopic because these CEOs are quarter driven, right?
Yeah.
So like it's not right.
Yep. And I want to see numbers come down. I want to see profit rise because it's my term and I was the best guy we ever had. And it's, that's never going to change.
Right. And so it definitely is. I went to a concierge doc and he basically laid it out. He goes, my old practice, I had 2,700 patients. Mm-hmm. He goes, this one is capped at 600. And he goes, and that's why you called me this morning and you're in my office right now.
Yeah. And his life is better and your life is better.
Yeah. And he said, infinitely less
talking
stressed.
About community, right? You brought up community. There is no possible way your physician knows jack shit about you when you have thousands of patients.
No,
correct.
Zero.
Correct.
Zero.
They're pissed off when I had my last doctor before this. We were in a physical. The NP or whoever took my stuff, she like weighs me on a scale with my fucking Carhartt on and my Timberlands. I'm like, this isn't fucking accurate in any shape. And then a little receipt printer, you know, is in the office is just spitting out ticker tape, and he hands me a stack of these like 6x6 receipts. One of them says, your BMI is too high. You should go on a low fat diet. I'm like, what fucking straight line did you just draw?
Well, you know, and the crazy thing is that's not even a fucking smart scale, right?
Yeah,
it's a number based on your height. Yeah. It's not even.
Right. But it was with my wallet and keys and fucking jacket. It was wintertime. I'm like, oh my God, this is a nonsense. And then when I asked him about it, you could almost see him doing this, like, motherfucker, you're
taking too much of my time.
Like, I gotta go.
Yeah. Meanwhile, my physical now is 3.5, 4 hours long, split over 2 days with 9 vials of blood.
Yeah.
Like, I get a phone book back from that guy, right? Like, I mean, he's like, oh, there's 62 lipid tests on here that of 60 of which I've never even heard of before this guy, right? Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, like total cholesterol. He goes, I don't know why you're worried about that. Here's the other ones you got to be worried about. And I'm like, see, no one ever broke that down for me. Like, but guess what? He's not free, and my insurance doesn't cover him. So you got to dig out of pocket and do that. Now, he's savvy about making sure my blood tests get covered and all that stuff to the degree he can.
Yeah.
But he's limited by the codes and all the other stuff that that, you know, Tom gets to be annoyed with every day.
Look, man, I've got 4 treatment codes. It's the ICD-10s that like kick me in the ass.
Yeah.
We don't cover this. We cover that one.
Evelyn, any of this covered in insurance in your world or not at all?
Not yet. Not yet. Yeah, but you know what I say to people is, you know, when the BRCA gene first came on the scene, that wasn't covered either. And today that would seem like a what?
Yeah, you're looking at a breast cancer epidemic, and why wouldn't you look at that? Yeah.
Cool. So where do we send people, Evelyn? How do we get people to you?
Our website is Wired Biohealth, wiredbiohealth.com. Our number is 888-841-7099. Either way, get a hold of us. We offer a 15-minute complimentary consultation. Tell us what's going on with you, what you've done so far. Would this be something that would benefit you or point you in another direction? But yeah, I mean, it's a game changer for people. You know, it's
wow.
I hope this qualifies or satisfies the 15-minute requirement.
Yours in the mail, Matt.
Yeah. I feel like you know exactly what we're up to. But no, I love this, and I definitely will talk to you afterwards. But
I'm like, skip the consultation. Let's go.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you so much, Evelyn, for coming on, man. This was
such a good time. So much information.
A lot of fun too. So
yeah, I love it, man. Thank you guys. All right, well, have a great weekend, Evelyn, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
You as well. Take care.
Take care.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.